Welcome. We have Carly here to talk to us today about the Hebrew Bible and anthropology. So Carly, I guess we should start out by asking, what does anthropology have to do with the Hebrew Bible?
Well, anthropology is the study of human beings and the study of the way in which we're prone, kind of as a species, to certain kinds of more or less repetitive behaviors, the things that we do collectively as human people especially who live in societies. So anthropology and sociology are very closely related disciplines in the social sciences. And so insofar as the Hebrew Bible is talking about people, anthropology can be pretty helpful in understanding the way in which we understand those people and what they were trying to do.
Okay, so what particular issues in the Hebrew Bible have been helped by anthropological methods?
Well, the one that comes immediately to mind is identity issues. So the way in which human beings, at the risk of sounding like a cliche from time immemorial, human beings have concerns about identities and have tended to form into groups, and that these are groups which they try and distinguish from other groups. And so identity and human identity is both a very universal human phenomenon and also one which can help us really understand biblical texts which are very concerned about identity and Israelite identity, for example.
So it sounds like anthropology can be very helpful to the Hebrew Bible student. I'm wondering if the road runs both ways. Can the Hebrew Bible do the same for the anthropology student?
Yes, I think it can. So, most anthropologists are engaged in discussions of living people in the modern world, which definitely has its advantages. You can interview them, you can observe them. It's pretty difficult to do that with people who have been dead for quite a long time, a couple thousand years at least. But nonetheless, these texts are witnesses to people who lived and or stories about traditions maintained by living communities. And so we can use these kinds of texts, and anthropologists can use these kinds of texts to see the way in which human behavior in a lot of ways hasn't changed for millennia. And so it provides kind of the long perspective for anthropological research.
So you mentioned identity. Can you talk me through that in a particular text in the Hebrew Bible?
Sure. So Deuteronomy is one of the texts which is most overtly concerned with identity in the Hebrew Bible. And if we come at Deuteronomy's identity concerns and identity issues from an anthropological perspective, we can use anthropological theories of identity, and especially ethnic identity, ethnic identity, as a way of highlighting particular issues that Deuteronomy is concerned with. So, for example, ethnic identities and ethnic groups are often concerned to homogenize group practice, cultural practice. So to try and level it, to make it as similar as possible across the group. So everyone within the group does the same kind of thing. So we see Deuteronomy doing this perhaps most obviously in its concern to have all of the Israelites only worship Yahweh. So no other gods, only Yahweh. And we see it in similar sorts of ways in kind of more minor laws throughout Deuteronomy, things like not sacrificing your children or passing your children through fire, or what exactly is going on in that rather strange text. Not allowing certain kinds of divinatory practices. So there's a variety of very technical divinatory practices that Deuteronomy prohibits in favor of prophecy. So prophecy is the particularly Israelite way of communicating with the divine. So we see a number of different ways in Deuteronomy that those identity issues are concerned with homogenization. Another thing that anthropology helps us highlight is that ethnic identity groups often are concerned with physically bringing together the people or the group in question. Now, this is often associated with claims to particular territory. So the members of an ethnic identity group are associated with a particular territory. And to an extent that is true in Deuteronomy, But what we also see Deuteronomy doing is actually in a slightly different way, is physically bringing together the people around the central cult site. So not just kind of within a certain territory, but around a very specific cult site where all gathered together around that space, you get kind of a reinforcement of the norms and values of the group. So if you're not exposed to outsiders, you don't tend to question the kinds of behaviors which are normal within your group. And so by bringing the Israelites together around the single cult site, Deuteronomy reinforces the values and norms of that group. And as sort of maybe a third example of anthropology's attention to ethnic identity issues, flags up ethnic groups usually have some kind of common mythology of origins. So some kind of historical mythological way of articulating the common roots, the common ancestry of the ethnic group. Now, often this gets articulated in terms of genetic descent, so the idea of a single ancestor from whom all of the current members of the group are descended. Now, it's well known that that's often an imagined, kind of an idealized way of articulating the communality and the connections amongst the group, but it's a very common one. And another way of doing that is more of a historical narrative. So for example, in Deuteronomy, we see this constant appeal to Yahweh your God who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. So the idea of Egypt as the place of origin for the Israelites and the Israelites as Israelites. So looking at Deuteronomy through an anthropological lens, through the lens of anthropological theories of ethnic identities, we can pick up on certain things that Deuteronomy is doing and make some more sense of the way in which it's trying to achieve its particular interests and concerns to do with Israelite identity.
Carly, thank you.